part 3 of the trilogy on tests and surveys. I see that Matt's here and Diane and Lynn, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And as requested, I do have a question about tests. Had an email asking if it is possible, if I have a test in one course, can I copy that test to other sections? The answer is you can get that test into other sections, but not using the copy function. You will have to go to Test Surveys and Pools, select the chevron to the right of the test that you desire, click Export to either the local computer or content collection, and then go to the course that you want it inserted into and import it. I'm going to go ahead and turn this session over to our moderator, Diane Carnes, for the final part of tests. So in this session, we're going to talk about surveys. So we've been first, well, we'll go ahead and talk about surveys. And we've been using the tools that is test, pools, and surveys. Setting up surveys and using surveys work the exact same way, same functionality, same types of questions as tests. So I won't review that information in detail, but what I will be covering is why use surveys and how do you retrieve the data after you've completed the survey. Some of the reasons of, why we use surveys, how do we build those, how do we deploy them, and how we access the data. Those include reasons to learn more about the students, taking a poll of their interest and experience, or gaining an understanding of their course-related knowledge and skills. So, for example, you may have a new class coming in, and you have experienced that there's a variety of knowledge, skills, or experience with the students. You want to understand what that is because you may vary your examples that you use in the class, or you may have to provide more knowledge to a small set of students, and you'll want to do that on the side rather than trying to doing that on individual students. So the assessment and mastery of the subject matter would include first class meeting general information about the student level preparation, and you'll want to use short, simple questionnaire, and do it at the beginning of a class. So you would use Blackboard for doing this. And you can save these questions for future use in other courses. So you can save it from one semester to the next to reuse the questions, or you can still use pools also and have a pool of questions in online sections at the university. We complete our student midterm and end-of-term evaluations using survey tools. One important thing to pay attention to on surveys is it does not identify the student. You'll see when we go into Grade Center and we start looking at Blackboard and how this function is that you'll be able to identify with a check mark that the student has completed the survey, but when you look at the pool of the data that's created, you will not be able to identify what that student's response was. There are other methods to set up working with the data center at Lawrence Tech University to set up a survey that is separate from your course so you do not see how many students have responded to the survey and being able to narrow down specifically who has completed the survey. So it's always important for students to feel comfortable if this is a type of survey that prohibits them from sharing information because they're afraid they're going to be identified. Okay? So we'll look at surveys today with an example that you want to gain more knowledge about the students and so you can proceed with your course. The way that we get started with that is the same way that we do all of our test surveys and pools. We go to the control panel section of your course, and using course tools, we end up selecting test surveys and pools. I'm going to pause for a second here so that I can start up the session for Blackboard. We do have one question that says, what if you are learning about students. Can you tell me more about that, Matt? I'm not sure what you mean by that question.
Well, you started off indicating you could use a survey to learn more about your students, which is, I understood. But then you went into discussion about how the surveys would be anonymous, and I just wanted to make sure there was a distinction between one and the other.
Well, my example of learning more about your students is learning about the body of students, not about a very specific student, but about the body of students, the body of knowledge that's in the classroom. So, for example, you have a class of 15 students. You can do a survey that says, across the 15 students, tell me the types of experiences that you have as a student body as a whole. If you want to learn more about a very specific student, you would have to use the test function, still deploying survey-type questions, which you'll be able to identify the responses for that specific student, or still use a survey, but you'd have to have the student fill in a response that indicates what their name is. Does that answer your question?
Yep, that answers it.
I'm going to start by going into Blackboard to build a survey. So I'm in my course. I'm going to select the test surveys and pools, and I'm going to select surveys. Keep in mind, the information that we covered in how to build a test and the functionality is the exact same things you do for a survey. I'm going to select build a survey. Now, these are tests that I have out here from before. There are different surveys that I have set up. So I could pull those up, modify them if I wanted to, and then redeploy them. But I'm going to build a brand new one so we can see the functionality. I can also import a survey from another course. So using the same topic that Marquita started off with, an instructor has a test in another course, and they want to use it in the new section that they have this semester, or at least the other two that they're teaching. They could have exported and imported that. So we're going to build a survey. When you build a survey, always give it a name. And as mentioned in the past, any descriptive text that you want to add in, you can always do that later just before you deploy the survey. You have the option to go in and edit this box of information again. So for now, we're not going to do that. Functionality is still the same again as you do for a test. You can create the question. You can find the questions if you happen to have a pool of survey-type questions that you want to use in your particular class, and you'll still come up with the set of questions to access. It's being very slow, so we will move away from that screen rather than wait for it. And then you can also upload additional questions if you have the same examples that we used in session 2 and 1, where you have a set of questions that you've obtained from another course or from your publisher or your textbook. So you're going to use create questions. One of the main types of questions that you typically see in a survey is a Likert that says, tell me your level of satisfaction, your level of comfort with whatever the topic is that you may be using. So you can put a scale in. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest, rate your level of comfort in submitting assignments online. And you can build that type of a question. So when you're using a scale, you can select the number of levels that you want to use. And it defaults to 6, but you could have up to 20. But if all you want are 4 or 5, you can remove any of the additional questions. So right now it defaulted to 6. I'm going to remove one of them. So I now have 5 available to me. Okay? And then if I only wanted 4, I would remove one more. And all we're doing is we're building the types of questions. And we can say question 1, or whatever you want it to be. You may say level of comfort with online courses. And so I can ask a question, do you, say on a scale of 1 to 5, how much have the Wimba sessions include your use of Blackboard. Okay, it's important how you write your question too. I wouldn't say this is one of the best types of survey questions because I've mixed a couple of things here together. But we want to make sure we're asking very specific questions. My question isn't about how much you like Wimba. It has Wimba improved your use of Blackboard? And I could have been more specific and said the use of creating tests. Okay, and I can say on a scale of 1 to 5, very much. I could say not much, some. Okay, and it's, you know, your text that you want to use. You want to plan out your survey questions ahead of time so that you're gaining the information that you want. What you don't want to have happen is you built this survey, everybody responds to it, and you look at, I wish I had set that question up differently because I didn't test out how the students might respond to it. So you want to plan those out ahead of time, and e-learning services can help you with that. So let's assume that, you know, that one's all set up, and I do have one created that we'll look at all the types of questions in there. You can have a yes or a no question, which is our either or. And I ask a question. One of my setups that you'll see have you used taken an online class before. Okay, so I may want to know as an online instructor, do I have any students in my class that have never taken an online class? Because I want them to be successful in the learning versus spending a lot of their time trying to figure out how the heck to use Blackboard. And so I may find that maybe a handful of students, 5 students, have never taken an online class before. I can direct them over to e-learning service to get some one-on-one training, or to the e-help page to help them be comfortable with the tools in Blackboard for success in their online class. And they would answer yes or no. You can also set it up, do I agree, disagree, is this right or wrong, true or false? This is definitely a yes or no question. Have you ever taken an online class? I don't want to know how many, I just want to know, have you ever taken an online class? To be much more specific, I can say at LTU versus just anywhere. So that's an example of how you set up your questions. Again, they're the same functionality as you use with your test area. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to look at a survey that I've already set up today. I'm going to look at the edit on it. And I've put 3 types of questions in here, and I asked some of the students or some of the members of our office to answer these questions for us. So I asked them on a scale of 1 to 5. Scale of 1 to 5, how much have the Wimba sessions improved your Blackboard? We already did. Because I already deployed it was why I'm getting the warning screen on here. So I have 3 questions in here. I asked the questions. What is your level of comfort with taking an online class? And I put in three responses. Hi, I've taken at least one online course. I'm comfortable with completing an online class because I've used Blackboard in some of my courses before. Or this is my first time ever using Blackboard and taking an online class. That tells me a lot here because I know that they've never used Blackboard, plus they've never taken an online class. I want to immediately get those students some help. Or I won't know who they are because it's an anonymous survey, but I will be able to say for those students, and I see there's 5 that have not used Blackboard in the past, here's some training material for you. And I can make that available to them in the course and send them off to eHelp for that. Okay? Any questions at this point? You deploy your survey, you've completed it, it's done, you're ready for the students to start taking it. You set it up the exact same way you would any assignment, any test or survey. You come into Create Assessment, you click on Survey, you find the survey that you want to deploy. We're going to use our test survey. Click on Submit. This is again where you can come back to this text box and add in any type of descriptive material for the students, explain to them the purpose of the survey and when you want them to do it. Or any other information that's important. You want to make this available to them. You want them to be able to take it multiple attempts. You want them to be able to start it and finish it later. Then don't click the forced completion. And any other options that you want to use. Again, these options are the exact same options that you have in your test area. Click Submit, and it becomes available to the students to complete. And just a little helpful hint, whenever you add something to assignments, deploy it, it always ends up at the bottom of the list. You can always drag and drop it to the area that you want it to be in, or this little box right here, click on and highlight that item and bump it up to the top and you see the arrows right here. Click Submit. Tells me that it's reordered, and so it's now available at the top of the list. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and click in the one that I set up for demonstration in this course. So I did a survey of knowledge level. Students begin survey. Answer the questions. Remember we did the scale, Likert? Student will click on the radio button that answers the question for them, or the answer that they're most comfortable with. Are you new to this? And any fill in the blank information. Tell me some more information. In your opinion, what type of knowledges will be most helpful for your success in an online class? Tutorials, access to tutorials as I'm completing my course, how to do assignments. Where do I find this information? So it's an open-ended question. It's not a very specific answer that you're looking for, but it's helpful information to learn more about the specific student. Once they're all done, they will click Save and Submit. It tells me I didn't complete that, and I know I didn't. All the information's been submitted. So all of your students have completed this survey. You ask them to do it by a very specific time. You want to verify if they've completed all of the, if everyone's completed the survey. So you want to monitor it. Go to your grade center, access the full grade center. And the way surveys are set up, what it does is it gives you a check mark. It tells you who has completed that survey. What it doesn't tell you when we get ready to look at the data, which I'll share with you, who said what. What it does is it just tells you who's completed the survey. This is an example of why we do our end-of-term and midterm student evaluations separate from a faculty member's course. Because what you could do is you could end up monitoring if only one student has completed that survey and we told them that it was anonymous, you're going to see their response on that. We do not want to do that with our private data that we're looking when we're evaluating somebody. But the type of survey that we're doing today, we just want to gain knowledge from the students. So it really doesn't matter if we know what their response is. We just want to pull it all together. So I see 3 people out of everyone that's listed in this test course that I have completed the survey. Well, I want to find out what they had to say. Let's assume everybody responded to it. But I want to find out what they had to share about their level of comfort with taking an online class so that I can prepare for maybe that second week of class or start distributing information to the students. There's 2 ways to do that. One is that you click on the chevron that is for that survey that you just set up. You click that on, and you want to look at attempt statistics. What that's going to do is give you a summary for each question. It'll give you a percentage for each item. And also print this document by doing a right mouse click, and you select this frame and print the frame. So you can print this full report, your own printer. So I look across here and I see that there was a total of 3 attempts completed for this survey. And I see that, what is your level of comfort with taking this online class? I see that 66% of the class were comfortable with it. I see that, and I know there's only 3 people that answered this, so I know 1 student is not comfortable with taking an online class. I could have seen, you know, half the class, maybe 50% in there. My response is going to be is, well, let me give them some information, contacting e-learning services, post an announcement. E-learning services, maybe put a link in there on how to get the e-help page that we have out there. So my job as an instructor is not to teach them how to take an online class, but to get them in the right place to gain knowledge and understanding, because e-learning services does such a fabulous job of teaching how to work with Blackboard. So we send them off to the right area. And then on here I see that in addition, is this their first time new to the university? Well, that tells me they need even more information. If they're not familiar with Blackboard, they're brand new to the university, and they're taking an online class, I may send them back to their advisors and let them know who to go see. Again, not very specific, general information. And in your opinion, you know, what's going to help you be successful in an online class? Someone just wants all the answers. Well, they're not going to get all the answers. But my response to that would be, a success in an online class, you know, do the work the same that you would do in the classroom. So again, this is a little bit of a fun test, just to give you an example of what your summarized information looks like. So this is a report. It took each question and it summarized and gave me a percentage. And I will be able to work with this information as an instructor. Do I need to adjust any of my material, my examples, get the students in the right area of the university to help them with what their needs may be? Questions? Does anybody have any comments that they want to share on how these surveys can help them with teaching their class?
Sometimes there's language barriers or other cultural things that make it difficult, and these surveys would probably, if the questions were stated properly, would probably show that type of thing fairly quickly.
Yeah, so you'd be able to get a better understanding of the makeup of your students, to get them maybe over to the Academic Achievement Center, their English is their second language opportunities. And maybe you don't know all of the resources as an instructor that are available, but you again bounce that back to your developer, e-learning service, or the right area of the university to help with that. Again, these types of assessments, reviews of the student body, help with getting a level of knowledge about the student to get them in the right area. Because we as instructors can't teach them everything that has to do with the university and their academic area.
I've got a question. What is the advantage of using this Blackboard feature versus a free web tool like Boomerang or SurveyMonkey?
Okay. The question is, what is the advantage of using this Blackboard feature, which is our survey feature, versus a free web tool such as Boomerang or SurveyMonkey? They basically work the same. The only difference would be, in my knowledge, is that you're taking the student away from Blackboard and sending them off into another area to complete your survey. And if the instructor is comfortable with these tools and they work best for them, they use them. Does that answer your question, Lynn? In fact,
yes. And also, what is really helpful is within Blackboard, I get the check in my Grade Center to see who's completed it and who hasn't. I don't have that in Boomerang.
Yeah, good point there, because you're saying within Blackboard's functionality, you can see who's completed that. Now, at the university, we have used SurveyMonkey, so it gets into it depends, because Blackboard survey tools don't do everything that we need. So if we were doing more of a statistical analysis, Blackboard survey tools really don't have that capability. So we may go off into SurveyMonkey and use that tool to work with that. And sometimes we'll have a question that is a fill in the blank, basically, that says we need your name and the course that you're in. And just hope that the students fill all of that in, or make it a required question that they fill it in. That way we can tell who did it. Another option that you have with reviewing your data is to download the results. What you're going to get is a data file. So all of the data that's been completed, you'll be able to maybe manipulate, analyze that data, do some statistical review across it. And these are much more complicated, more in-depth surveys. So you can do the download results, and it's going to ask you, do you want to list it out by user, by question and user? I typically do by the user. And it depends on the survey. Do I want only valid attempts, meaning only the surveys that have been completed, or do I want all attempts? So even if there was just partial completion on the survey, maybe they only answered, if you had 10 questions, maybe they only answered 5 of them. Do you want all of them or not? It depends on the survey. I typically, because I'm working with typically student evaluation data, I want all attempts because all data is good data, even if they only answered 5 of the questions out of 20 of them. And I typically do comma delimited files, and what that means is for every row of data, every question that I have, I want it separated by a comma. So when I bring it into Excel, it's in its own cell area, and I'll show you in a second what that means. So I say click to download the results. And on my particular computer setup that I have it set up that anything that I download goes into my downloads folder. And so this is the survey that just downloaded for me. And you can have a default set up so that it goes to a different folder for you, but I know for mine, this is where it goes. So I know that that survey is sitting there. And I have a couple of examples. What I've already done is opened up that data. So what you can do is just click on that survey, and it opens up in Excel. Remember we did a comma delimited file? When you just click on that file and you open it up in Excel, all it's going to do is dump all those rows of data, which is each student that is answered. And we know 3 students answered those questions, so I will have 3 lines of data. The top line is all of the questions that were asked. So I have 3 lines of data, but it's all in one cell. Everything's together. It doesn't really help me very much. So that's why we have the comma delimited. So I'm going to close this, show you when you open it with comma delimited, and I'll show you how to do this. Everything ends up in its own cell. So question number 1, question ID is the first question, and it says, question number 1, what is your level of comfort? And it lists out the question for each person, and then here's the answer, because it says answer right there. For each student, I can see what their answer was in there. So everything is in its own cell, rather than all of it jumbled together, and it's because we did that comma delimited on there. Let me show you how that works for those of you that are not familiar with Excel. I'm going to open the file. In order to open it, I'm going to go to my downloads area. I'm going to click on that file, and then I get this special screen that comes up. It says, this is a different file. It's not a normal file that I'm used to working with. Tell me a little bit about it. I know that it's delimited. I move on to the next. That's my option on that screen to pick. The next one says, okay, I know that I selected comma delimited. Okay, on to the next screen. This is good. I understand it. I'm all set. I'm good to go. There's no other options to pick. I'm going to click finish, and there's my file. Okay, so now rather than go through that each time, I can do a save as on this file. So next time I want to use it, I've already formatted this file. I don't have to do it again. And then I can work with editing that data and managing it. Okay? And maybe over time, what I want to do is an analysis across an academic year. out of all the sections that I teach each semester, I teach 3 sections of one particular class. I want to gain an understanding how many students across an academic year are brand new to online courses. And then I can work with e-learning services. Of all the classes I teach every academic year, there's at least 50%. What can we do to put together some tutorial to answer these types of questions for the students? So as I, as an instructor, I don't have to take up 3 hours on my first night of class teaching all of this all the time. I can just point them in the right direction. I, as an instructor, can move forward helping the student academically being successful in the class versus just learning how to use Blackboard. So that's just one example of using the data in the class. Okay. Any questions? How might a survey help your class to give you the opportunity to focus more on instruction and less on getting the student kicked off on how to take an online class?
Well, I suppose it would be helpful in the area of understanding which parts of the course content are not being comprehended as well as others.
Okay. Another example I give my instructors that I work with in online, why wait for the midterm evaluation? Why not ask maybe 3 weeks into the class, you can create a short survey that is very specific to areas that students feel they need more information. Can they answer what's the next upcoming assignment that they have due? And so you can do your own survey of satisfaction for students in a classroom. You don't have to wait for that midterm evaluation. You can just set up 2 to 3 questions and help you with adjusting as needed in a class. Lynn, do you have any examples of how surveys might be helpful in online classes?
Sometimes I'll do a survey as kind of like a jumping off point for a discussion board thread. If there's an issue that I want them to dig into, I might do a quick survey just to kind of get some basic statistics on that topic and then ask them to dig deeper in the discussion board.
Okay. So all good opportunities, and maybe in the future what we can do in the e-help area is we can provide some examples of why use a survey versus just the buttons on there. So that would be helpful. Okay, so just a quick review. Surveys. I'm going to come back into our Wimba session. Get back to okay, so again, Blackboard in creating surveys works the exact same way as done in the past, which is where you are going to your control panel and clicking on test surveys and pools. Works the exact same way to set up as you do tests. In the way that you create a survey, they work exactly the same. The only difference at this point is that you can retrieve the data as a summary across the whole class of all of the data. And it's a great tool for helping the instructor gain knowledge about the class. So that concludes our surveys, since we've covered much of the material about how to deploy these and set these up in previous ones. Thank you. Okay. This ends the trilogy on test surveys, and thank you, Diane, for the 3 weeks and sharing your knowledge with us. It's been great. This has been enlightening. So join us next week, since this is the beginning of the end of a semester. The session for next week will cover some very helpful hints in finishing and finalizing your course. How to set your course up, getting ready to export it, clean it up, download your grade center, how to save it. So if you want to find some good hints on how do I finish up my course once I get everybody done and finals are all over with, what do I do now? So that will be next week's session. And on that note, I will say au revoir Remember last week I stopped with Adios?